Hana Kim dragged her feet through the bright corridors of Galactic Station Meridian 7. Her body ached in places she didn't know could ache. 14 hours of teaching alien children about Earth mathematics and human history had drained every bit of energy from her bones. 2 teachers had called in sick with the Vorlian flu, and Hana had covered their classes without complaint. That was just who she was. The station hummed with its usual evening sounds. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved past her. Some had fur, some had scales, and some looked like walking crystals that caught the light. Hana nodded politely to a tall insectoid creature that clicked a greeting. She had learned dozens of ways to say hello in the 8 months since leaving Earth. Her stomach growled loudly. She had skipped lunch again, giving her meal portion to a young Scrit student whose family was struggling. The kid had looked so hungry. Hana couldn't eat while watching those big compound eyes stare at her food tray. So she had smiled, said she wasn't hungry, and handed it over. But now she was starving, and tired, and homesick. Her quarters were still 10 minutes away through the winding passages of the education wing. But she had something to look forward to. Hidden in her locker near the teacher's common room was her last chocolate chip cookie. The last one. Her brother Jiho had sent it 3 months ago, in a care package from Earth. She had saved it, rationing the others, making them last. This final cookie was supposed to be for emergencies only. Today felt like an emergency. Hana changed direction, heading toward the locker bay. Earth goods were expensive out here, sometimes costing a month's salary for a simple bag of chips. The shipping fees alone were insane. Most human teachers ate station food and saved their money. Hana sent nearly all her credits back home to help Jiho pay for their mother's medical treatments. That cookie represented more than just chocolate and sugar. It was home. It was her brother's laugh. It was Earth. She turned the corner into the corridor that led to the locker bay and nearly walked into a small group huddled against the wall. 4 small creatures sat on the floor, their fox-like faces pointed downward. Velthian cubs. Hana recognized them from the refugee section of the station. Their colony ship had been damaged weeks ago by a meteor storm. Hundreds of Velthians now lived in the temporary housing units, waiting for repairs or resettlement. The cubs looked up as Hana stopped. Their large eyes were wet. One of them, a small female with silver-tipped ears, was crying softly. The others patted her shoulders with their small paws, making worried, chirping sounds. "Hey," Hana said gently, crouching down to their level. "Are you okay?" The crying cub sniffled. "It's my hatching day," she whispered in heavily accented standard. "But there's no celebration, no special food, no singing. Mama says, we must save everything." Hana's heart squeezed tight in her chest. A birthday with nothing. She knew these cubs had lost almost everything when their ship was damaged. The Velthian community was proud, but struggling. They rarely asked for help. "I'm Pip," the cub said, wiping her eyes with the back of her paw. "These are Trill, Whisker, and Nix. We were trying to make Pip feel better, but we have nothing to give her." The other cubs nodded sadly. Their ears drooped. Hana stood slowly. She looked down the corridor toward the locker bay, then back at the 4 small faces watching her. Her stomach growled again, loud enough that Pip's ears twitched. The cookie, her last cookie, the last piece of Earth she would have for months, maybe longer. The next supply ship wasn't due for another 12 weeks. She thought about her own childhood, the year her father had died, and money was so tight. Jiho had saved his allowance for 2 months to buy her a birthday cake. Just a small one from the discount store, but he had given her everything he had. She remembered how that felt, how loved she felt. "Wait here," Hana said. She walked quickly to the locker bay, her fingers shaking slightly as she entered her code. The locker door slid open. There, in a small protective container, sat the cookie. Perfect. Round. Studded with chocolate chips. She picked it up carefully, holding it like the treasure it was. For a moment, Hana just stared at it. She could eat it later. Alone in her room, savoring every bite. She could make it last for days, taking tiny nibbles. No one would know. The cubs would forget about her in an hour. They would survive without it. But she would know. Hana closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and walked back to the cubs. They looked up at her, with curious expressions. She sat down on the floor with them, cross-legged, and carefully opened the container. "This is a chocolate chip cookie," she said. "It's from Earth. My brother sent it to me." The cubs leaned forward, their sensitive noses twitching. "It smells like happiness," Whisker said quietly. Hana smiled, though her chest felt tight. "Hatching days are important. My brother always told me that. So I want to share this with you, Pip. Happy hatching day." She carefully broke the cookie into 4 equal pieces. The cubs stared at her with shocked expressions. Pip's mouth opened, but no sound came out. But humans love their Earth food," Trill stammered. "Everyone knows this. You save it. You treasure it. This must be very important to you." "It is," Hana admitted. Her voice was steady even though her hands wanted to shake. "But hatching days are important too. And sharing with friends is more important than keeping things for yourself." She placed a piece in each small paw. The cubs held their pieces like fragile gifts. Pip looked up at Hana with huge, glistening eyes. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Hana said. "Eat it slowly. Enjoy every bite." The cubs didn't need to be told twice. They nibbled carefully, their eyes going wide with wonder. Velthians had incredibly sensitive taste buds, and Hana could see the joy spreading across their small faces. They made happy chirping sounds, their tails swishing back and forth. "It tastes like starlight and comfort," Nick said with wonder. "It tastes like love," Pip added softly, looking at Hana. Hana watched them eat, feeling warmth spread through her chest, despite her empty stomach. When the last crumbs were gone, the cubs thanked her over and over, their voices excited and happy. Pip hugged Hana's leg tightly before the group scampered off down the corridor, chattering about the amazing taste. Hana stood alone in the empty hallway. Her stomach still growled. She had nothing left from Earth now. Nothing sweet to look forward to. Just station rations and endless work. But somehow, walking back to her quarters, Hana felt fuller than she had in months. The look on Pip's face had been worth it. Sometimes, she thought, giving everything away was the only way to have enough. Pip couldn't sleep that night. She lay in the small bunk she shared with her sister in the refugee housing unit, staring at the ceiling. The taste of the cookie still lingered in her memory. But it wasn't just the taste that kept her awake. It was what the cookie meant. Teacher Hana had given away her last piece of Earth, her last comfort, and she had done it without hesitation, breaking it into 4 perfect pieces so everyone could share. Pip had seen the hunger in the human's eyes. She had heard her stomach growling. Yet Hana had smiled and given everything away. The next morning, Pip gathered Trill, Whisker, and Nix in their usual meeting spot behind the water recycling units. The 4 cubs sat in a tight circle, their tails wrapped around their bodies. "We have to do something," Pip said firmly. "Teacher Hana gave us everything. We can't just forget that." "But what can we do?" Whisker asked, his ears drooping. "We're refugees. We have nothing. My family shares one room with another family. We get basic rations and nothing more." Trill nodded sadly. "My mother says we should be grateful just to have shelter. We can't afford gifts." But Pip's eyes were bright with determination. "Then we find another way. We're clever, aren't we? We escaped a damaged ship. We survived. We can figure this out." Nix, the quietest of the group, spoke up. "We could watch her. Learn what she likes. Learn what she needs." "Yes," Pip's tail swished excitedly. "We observe, we learn, then we plan." Over the next 3 days, the 4 cubs became shadows. They weren't sneaky exactly. Active, But Velthian cubs were small and quick. They watched Hana during her teaching rounds. They hid behind corners and peeked through doorways. What they saw made Pip's heart hurt. Teacher Hana gave away her lunch 4 times. Once to a Skrit student, once to a Lumen child who had lost their meal voucher, and twice to other Velthian cubs who looked hungry. She never kept her full portion. She always found someone who needed it more. They watched her stay late after classes, helping a struggling Meln student learn human mathematics. She used her own data pad when the school's equipment broke. She never complained, even when other teachers left on time. They followed her to the market one evening and watched her carefully count her credits. She bought the cheapest food available, then spent the rest on art supplies for her classroom. At the checkout, she hesitated over a small earth candy bar, then put it back, shaking her head. "She has nothing," Whisker whispered as they watched from behind a vendor stall. "She sends everything home to her family." "Why?" Trill asked. "Why does she give so much?" "Because she's good," Pip said simply. "And good beings shouldn't be alone." On the 4th day, their observation caught the attention of Grandmother Nixel, the eldest Velthian, in the refugee section. She found the 4 cubs whispering together near the education wing entrance. "Why are you watching the human teacher?" Grandmother Nixel asked, her white-tipped tail curling with curiosity. Pip told her everything. The hatching day, the cookie, the giving away of lunch, the supplies bought with personal credits. Grandmother Nixel listened carefully, her old eyes growing softer. "She gave you her last cookie from Earth?" Grandmother Nixel repeated slowly. "Her last one," Pip confirmed. "She broke it into 4 pieces so we could all have some." Grandmother Nixel was quiet for a long moment. Then, she touched Pip's head gently with her paw. "Come with me, cubs. All of you." She led them to the refugee community hall, where many Velthian adults gathered during rest hours. Grandmother Nixel stood on a chair, so everyone could see her. And she told Hana's story. The room fell silent as she spoke. When she finished, there was a long pause. Then Pip's mother stood up. "The human teacher helped my youngest learn to read standard. She stayed 2 hours past her shift to tutor him. I couldn't pay her, so she said teaching was the payment." Another voice called out. "She found my lost data chip with my family photos on it. She searched for 3 hours. She gave my daughter her jacket when the heating broke in the classroom. She learned to say good morning in Velthian so we would feel welcome." The stories poured out, one after another. Small kindnesses none of them had talked about before. Acts of generosity they had quietly accepted, without realizing the pattern. This human, alone and far from home, had been taking care of everyone while taking care of no one. Especially not herself. "We must return the kindness," Grandmother Nixel declared. "Velthian honor demands it." But it didn't stop with the Velthians. Pip had a friend, a young Lumen named Crystal, who played in the station's mixed-species youth group. Crystal heard the story and told her parents. The Lumen community began to share their own Hana stories. She complimented my light patterns when others stare. She learned about our meditation needs and adjusted classroom brightness. The Skrit heard next. Their hive mind meant news traveled fast through their community. They remembered Hana defending a Skrit student from bullying. She had spent an entire day teaching other students about Skrit culture, turning cruelty into curiosity. Even the Meln, who lived in the aquatic section and rarely mixed with other species, heard about the human who had helped fix their water filtration system on her day off. She had gotten soaking wet and never complained. Within a week, the whole station seemed to know about teacher Hana and her last cookie. The story grew, spreading through communication networks, from one species to another, from one section to the next. The human who gave everything. The human who shared when she had nothing. The human who cared. Pip realized their small group of 4 cubs couldn't do this alone. They needed help. Real help. She needed to talk to someone who understood humans better. "We need to find Teacher Yuna," Pip announced to her friends. Yuna Park was another human teacher, older than Hana, with short black hair and kind eyes. She had been on the station for 3 years. Pip knew Hana, and Yuna ate lunch together sometimes. The cubs found Yuna in the teacher's lounge, grading papers on her datapad. When Pip explained their plan, Yuna's eyes filled with tears. "You want to thank Hana?" Yuna asked softly. "We want to give back," Pip said. "But we don't know human customs. We don't know what would make her happy. You're human. You know." Yuna set down her datapad and smiled. "Humans love care packages from home, favorite foods, comfort items, things that remind us of Earth. But those things are expensive. Pip, very expensive out here. What if many beings gave a little?" Nick suggested quietly. "All together?" Yuna's smile grew wider. "Then you'd have something special. Something amazing. You know what? I'll help you. Hana is my friend, and she deserves this. She deserves to know she's not alone." That night, Yuna sent out messages on the station's community network. She contacted cargo pilots, shopkeepers, administrators, and families. She told them about the Cubs' plan. She asked for help. The responses came flooding in. Credits donated, items offered, skills volunteered. People Hana had helped. People who had only heard her story. People who just wanted to be part of something good. They all wanted to contribute. Pip stood in the refugee hall 3 days later, surrounded by grandmother Nixel, her 3 friends, Yuna, and dozens of others from different species. Before them sat piles of items. Small things, large things, handmade things, expensive things. "This is really happening," Whisker breathed. "Yes," Pip said, her eyes shining. "Teacher Hana gave us everything when she had nothing. Now we give back. Now we show her what that kindness created." Yuna placed a hand on Pip's small shoulder. "Now we show her she has a family here. Because that's what we've become." Hana noticed something strange was happening on the station, but she couldn't figure out what. People kept smiling at her in the corridors. Not the usual polite nods, real smiles that reached their eyes, or eye stalks, or light patterns, depending on the species. "Is there something on my face?" she asked Minho, another human teacher, during their lunch break. Minho looked at her and shrugged. "You look normal to me." "Why?" "Everyone is acting weird. Happy weird. Like they know something I don't." Minho laughed. "Maybe the station is just having a good week." The Vorlian flu finally stopped spreading. The food synthesizers got upgraded. People are happy. Thanks for watching. And then with the next time. But it felt like more than that. Hana saw small groups whispering and going quiet when she walked by. She spotted Pip and her friends, ducking behind corners. Even the usually grumpy Skrit shopkeeper at the market gave her an extra portion of vegetables for free. Special sale, he had clicked through his translator. For good customers. Hana was too busy to think about it much. The Student Cultural Festival was coming up in 2 weeks, and she was helping organize the Earth Culture section. She needed to prepare presentations, coordinate with other teachers, and make sure the human students had everything they needed for their demonstrations. She worked late every night that week, often staying until the station's artificial lights dimmed to night mode. Her quarters felt too empty when she finally got home, so she told herself the work was important, necessary. It wasn't that she was avoiding the loneliness. Not really. What Hana didn't know was that behind her back, the entire station had mobilized. In the refugee housing section, Velthian families gathered whatever they could spare. They had so little, but they gave anyway. Pip's mother contributed a hand-woven comfort blanket in soft blue, the color of Earth's sky. It had taken her 3 weeks to make during her evening rest hours. Grandmother Nixel offered blessing stones, small, smooth rocks carved with Velthian symbols for health, happiness, and home. "She is far from her home," the old Velthian said. "She needs blessings." Trill's family contributed a set of small wooden figures they had carved, each one representing a different earth animal Hana had told them about. The detail was incredible. done with tiny claws instead of hands. The Lumen community approached Yuna with their contribution light crystals that could project images. They had programmed them to show Earth sunsets, Sol's skyline at night, and ocean waves. She teaches us about Earth, the Lumen elder explained through his translator. We wish to give Earth back to her. In light, the Skrit were master craftspeople. They created intricate origami-like sculptures from precious metals, each one folding and unfolding into different shapes. One showed a flower blooming, another displayed Earth from space. They presented them to Pip in a careful ceremony, their antennae bowing respectfully. The Meln delegation arrived with bioluminescent plants from their aquatic gardens. These plants clean air and glow softly at night. Their speaker bubbled. They will make her quarters feel less empty. Yuna worked the human angle. She contacted Earth supply ships and used her network of human traders across the sector. Cookies were expensive. But when she explained the story, the human who gave her last cookie to refugee cubs, suddenly, everyone wanted to help. A cargo pilot named Captain Tejo, gruff and usually business-focused, listened to the story and went quiet. My daughter had teacher Hana for mathematics last year, he said slowly. The kid was failing. Hana stayed after class every day for 2 months. Didn't charge extra. Said teaching was her job. My daughter passed. She's studying engineering now because of that. Captain Tejo donated a full case of chocolate chip cookies, the good kind from Earth, the expensive ones. He also added Korean snacks, honey butter chips, pepero sticks, seaweed crisps, even a jar of kimchi that cost more than Hana's weekly salary. Don't tell her I went soft, he grumbled, but his eyes were wet. Even the station's administrator, a stern human named Kwan, who rarely involved himself in personal matters, contributed. He appeared at Yuna's quarters one evening with a sealed container. Earth coffee, he said simply. Real coffee, not the synthetic stuff from the food synthesizers. I've been saving it for special occasions. This qualifies. Sir, this is incredibly generous, Yuna stammered. Administrator Kwan's expression softened. Teacher Kim filed 18 requests for new learning materials this year. She used her own credits every time when the requests were denied due to budget constraints. I approved what I could, but I should have done more. Consider this my apology. The items piled up. More than anyone expected. Credits were donated to a fund labeled Emergency Cookie Fund, so Hana could buy Earth foods whenever she needed. Students made cards and drawings. Teachers contributed entertainment data chips with Earth movies and music. A maintenance worker named Sora, who Hana had once helped with a translation problem, donated specialty tools and station credits. The problem quickly became obvious. Standard lockers were not big enough, not even close. Pip stared at the mountain of items filling 3 tables in the community hall. How do we fit all of this in her locker? Yuna bit her lip, thinking. We need to make her locker bigger. Can we do that? Nix asked. We can ask. Sora, the maintenance worker, was confused when Yuna and the 4 cubs appeared at her workshop. You want me to expand a teacher's locker? Why? Pip explained. Sora listened, her wrench hanging forgotten in her hand. Teacher Hana helped me read a safety manual that was only in Standard. I'm Krelian. Standard isn't my first language. She sat with me for 3 hours, explaining every word. I could have been fired for not understanding that manual. She saved my job. Sora stood up, grabbing her tools. I'll upgrade her locker to triple capacity. Call it a Station Appreciation Initiative. Administrator Kwan wants teachers to feel valued. Right? I'll file the paperwork. He'll approve it. She did. And he did. Over the next week, beings from across the station arrived at designated drop-off points with their contributions. Pip and her friends organized everything with Yuna's help. They made lists. They arranged items by type. They wrote cards explaining who each gift came from and why. The cubs worked tirelessly, their small paws perfect for detailed organizing. They barely slept. running on excitement and purpose. This was bigger than one hatching day. This was showing a good being that goodness mattered, that kindness echoed back. The night before the surprise, Yuna and the cubs did a final check. The expanded locker was packed carefully. Comfort items on one side, food on another, handmade gifts arranged with care, letters and cards stacked neatly, the light crystals positioned where they would be visible immediately. The emergency cookie fund, jar, placed front and center. Pip touched the locker door gently with her paw. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "Tomorrow Teacher Hana learns she's not alone." Yuna recorded a video message with help from the community. Hundreds of beings crowded into the frame. Velthians, Lumens, Skrit, Meln, humans, and dozens of other species. Pip stood in front, her voice steady and practiced. "Teacher Hana gave us her last cookie. She gave when she had nothing. We give back, because that is what family does." Other voices joined in, a chorus of different languages and sounds, all translated to standard. "Thank you. You showed us human heart. You're not alone." The video ended with everyone waving. Yuna saved it to play first when the locker opened. That night, Pip couldn't sleep again. But this time, it was different. This time, she was excited. Tomorrow, the human who had shared everything would learn what that sharing had created. Tomorrow, Teacher Hana would understand that giving everything away had given her everything back. Hana woke up tired. Again. She had stayed up late finishing reports and planning next week's lessons. The station's artificial morning light filtered through her small window, and she groaned as her alarm beeped insistently. Another day. More classes. More work. She pulled on her standard teaching uniform, a simple gray jumpsuit with the station education insignia on the shoulder. Her quarters felt emptier than usual this morning. No coffee, she had run out days ago, and couldn't justify buying more. No time for breakfast either. She grabbed her datapad and headed out. The corridors were quiet this early. Only a few maintenance workers and early shift personnel moved through the halls. Hana liked these peaceful moments, before the station fully woke up. They gave her time to think, to prepare mentally for the day ahead. She had 4 classes today. Then a meeting about the cultural festival. Then tutoring sessions with 3 struggling students. Somewhere in there, she needed to eat. But that seemed negotiable. Food could wait. The students couldn't. Hana reached the teacher's locker bay and paused. Something felt different, but she couldn't identify what. The room looked normal. Same gray walls, same rows of lockers, same recycled air with a faint metallic smell, but her skin prickled with awareness. She shook her head. Too much stress. Not enough sleep. She walked to her locker, number 847, and stood in front of it. Her fingers moved automatically, entering her access code while her eyes stayed on her datapad, reading the morning announcements. The locker door slid open. Things fell out. Boxes tumbled onto the floor. Packages spilled across her feet. Something soft landed on her shoulder. Hana jumped back, yelping in surprise, her datapad clattering to the ground. Her heart hammered in her chest. "What?" she started, staring at the pile of items now scattered around her. More things were visible inside the locker, packed tightly, filling a space that seemed much bigger than she remembered. Hana looked at the locker number. 847. Her locker. She looked at the access panel, still showing her name. H. Kim. Definitely her locker. "Did I open the wrong one?" she muttered. But that was impossible. The code only worked on her assigned locker. She knelt down slowly, picking up the nearest item. Chocolate chip cookies. Earth-made. Premium quality. Her breath caught in her throat. She grabbed another box. Korean honey butter chips. Then another package. Pepero sticks. And another. Seaweed crisps. Earth kimchi, in a sealed container. Item after item. All Earth foods. All things she hadn't tasted in months. All things she couldn't afford. "This isn't real," Hana whispered. "This can't be real." She stood on shaky legs and looked inside the locker. It was huge now, triple its normal size, and packed with items. She saw a folded, blue blanket, crystals that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls, small carved figures, plants that glowed softly, cards, letters, so many letters, and in the center, impossible to miss, a large jar labeled Emergency Cookie Fund, filled with station credits. Hana's vision blurred. Her chest felt tight. This was too much. This was impossible. Who would do this? Why would anyone do this? Her hand reached into the locker, touching items carefully like they might disappear. Her fingers found a small device with a blinking light. A video player with a note attached. Play me first. 9. Also. 9. 9. 9. 9. Hana's hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. She managed to press play. Pip's face filled the small screen. The little Velthian cub stood in front of a massive crowd of beings. Hana recognized the community hall. Behind Pip stood Trill, Whisker, and Nix. Behind them stood what looked like half the station's population. Pip spoke carefully, her standard heavily accented but clear. Teacher Hana gave us her last cookie. She gave when she had nothing. We give back. Because that is what family does. The camera pulled back to show the crowd. So many faces. So many species. Hana saw Grandmother Nixel, Captain Teho, Administrator Kwan, Sora from maintenance, her students, their families, beings she had helped, beings she didn't recognize. Their voices overlapped, a beautiful chaos of languages all translated to standard by the video's subtitle system. Thank you for helping my daughter. You showed us human heart. You're not alone. You gave us kindness when we were refugees. You shared when you had nothing. You made the station feel like home. The video continued. Testimonial after testimonial. Beings explaining the small kindnesses Hana had done without thinking. The tutoring. The shared meals. The donated supplies. The late nights helping struggling students. The cultural education. The defense against bullying. The genuine care for everyone, regardless of species. The video ended with everyone waving at the camera. Pip's voice came one more time. We are your family now, Teacher Hana. Family takes care of each other. This is us, taking care of you. The screen went dark. Hana stood frozen in the empty locker bay. The video player slipped from her fingers. Her legs felt weak. She sank slowly to the floor, surrounded by gifts, surrounded by proof that she wasn't invisible, wasn't alone, wasn't just another worker passing through a cold station in the darkness of space. The tears came suddenly, overwhelming, unstoppable. They poured down her face, hot and messy. Her shoulders shook. Sounds came from her throat that she couldn't control, half sobs, half laughs, all emotion with no filter. She had thought she was alone. She had thought her kindnesses were just her job, just what any decent person would do. Nothing special. She had thought nobody noticed. Nobody cared. She was just Teacher Hana, the human who worked too much and went home to empty quarters every night. But they had noticed. They had cared. They had seen everything and valued it enough to do this. To come together. To spend money and time and effort. For her, it was just a cookie. Hana whispered through her tears. It was just one cookie. But it wasn't. She knew that now. It was never just a cookie. It was a choice. It was caring more about someone else's joy than her own comfort. It was giving everything when she had nothing left. And somehow, impossibly, that choice had echoed outward like ripples on water, touching beings she didn't even know, creating waves of kindness that came crashing back. She picked up the blue blanket and held it to her chest. It was soft, hand-woven with incredible care. Someone had spent weeks making this. For her, she buried her face in it, and cried harder. Footsteps echoed in the locker bay. Hana looked up, tears still streaming, to see Yuna standing in the doorway. Her friend's face was soft with understanding. "You found them," Yuna said gently. "Yuna, how this is?" Hana couldn't form complete sentences. Yuna sat down beside her on the floor, right in the middle of the scattered gifts. "The Cubs started it. Pip and her friends. They wanted to thank you for the cookie. But then, the story spread. Everyone wanted to help. Everyone wanted to show you that your kindness mattered." "I was just being nice," Hana sobbed. "I was just doing what anyone would do." "No," Yuna said firmly. "Not anyone. Most people walk past cubs crying on hatching days. Most people keep their last cookie. Most people don't give away lunch 4 times a week. Most people don't tutor for free. Most people don't learn alien languages to make refugees feel welcome. You did all that. Hana, you did it because you're good, and good deserves good back." Hana looked at the mountain of gifts. At the cards, with messages from students. At the expensive earth foods that represented so much sacrifice. At the handmade items that took time and skill. At the credits in the jar that meant beings had given their limited money. For her, "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "Yes, you do," Yuna said. She put an arm around Hana's shoulders. "You gave everything. This is everything given back. This is what happens when you plant kindness everywhere you go. It grows, and when it grows big enough, it comes home." Hana clutched the blanket tighter and let herself cry. Not sad tears anymore. These were different. These were tears that washed away loneliness, tears that cleaned out the empty spaces, tears that made room for something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, belonging, home. She wasn't alone anymore. She had never been alone. She just hadn't seen her family yet. The station newsletter ran a story 3 days later. The headline read, "Teachers' Kindness Creates Station-Wide Generosity Movement." Hana tried to avoid reading it, embarrassed by the attention. But everywhere she went, people had seen it. The article included an interview with Pip. The little Velthian cub had become a minor celebrity on the station. Reporters wanted to talk to her. Other cubs asked for her autograph. She handled it with surprising grace, always redirecting attention back to the message. Kindness matters. Hana found it overwhelming at first. People stopped her in corridors to thank her, to share their own stories, to tell her how the whole event had inspired them. She wasn't used to attention. She preferred working quietly, helping students, going unnoticed. But Yuna kept reminding her that this was important, that people needed to see goodness celebrated. "Let them thank you," Yuna said over coffee one morning. Real earth coffee, from Administrator Kwan's donation. Hana had cried again when she first tasted it. You gave them something to believe in. Let them give back. So Hana tried. She accepted dinner invitations from Velthian families. She attended Lumen meditation sessions, where they taught her to find peace in light patterns. She joined Skrit art circles and learned to fold metal with careful precision. She visited the Meln aquatic section and swam in their gardens, surrounded by glowing plants and gentle beings. Her quarters transformed. The plants from the Meln grew in careful pots, filling the air with clean oxygen and soft light at night. The crystals from the lumens sat on her desk, projecting Seoul's skyline when she felt homesick. The carved wooden animals from the Velthians lined her shelves. The metal sculptures from the Skrit hung from the ceiling, slowly spinning and catching light. But the biggest change wasn't in her quarters, it was in Hana herself. She wasn't lonely anymore. Beings knocked on her door regularly with food, conversation, or just company. Students visited after class not because they needed help, but because they wanted to share their day. Families invited her to celebrations, holidays, and quiet evenings. She had accidentally created a family, a huge, diverse, sometimes chaotic family spanning dozens of species and hundreds of individuals. They called her Teacher Hana with affection, Not just respect. The emergency cookie fund jar sat prominently on her desk. She used it occasionally for Earth snacks, but she found herself using it more often to buy supplies for students or food for families struggling with credits. The fund mysteriously refilled itself. Hana suspected Yuna and Administrator Kwan had something to do with that. The story spread beyond Meridian 7. Other stations heard about it through communication networks. Human news services picked it up. Human teachers' generosity inspires multi-species community ran on Earth feeds. Hana's mother called, crying with pride, telling her the whole neighborhood had seen the story. Jiho sent a message. "You gave away the cookie I sent you? I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. Also, I'm sending 10 more boxes. Share them. That's what they're for." Quote, 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 quote. But the real ripple effect happened quietly, in small ways across the station. A Skrit shopkeeper started a Pay What You Can program for struggling families. A Lumen teacher began free evening classes for adult refugees. A human cargo pilot reduced his rates for educational supply shipments. Beings who had never spoken to each other started conversations. Species that had kept to their own sections began mixing. Hana watched it all with wonder. She hadn't meant to start a movement. She had just given away a cookie. 3 months after the locker incident, Hana stood in front of the station council presenting a formal proposal. Administrator Kwan had suggested she do this, and Yuna had helped her prepare. "I propose the Share What You Have program," Hana said, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "It's a system where beings can contribute items, skills, or time they have in abundance, and others can access what they need. No money required. Just community supporting community." The council members, representing different species and station departments, listened carefully. Hana continued, "We already do this informally. But making it official, with a dedicated space and coordination, would help more beings. Velthian families could share weaving skills. Lumens could offer light therapy. Humans could teach Earth languages. Skrit could provide repair services. Everyone has something to give. Everyone needs something sometimes." Administrator Kwan nodded slowly. "This would require space allocation and administrative oversight. I'll coordinate it," Hana said. "With help from volunteers. Pip and her friends have already agreed to help. So has teacher Yuna. We have a list of 50 volunteers from different species." The council voted unanimously in favor. The Share What You Have program launched 1 month later in a converted storage bay. It became one of the most successful community initiatives in the station's history. 5 years passed. Hana stood in her new office, now head of education for Meridian 7. The promotion had surprised her, but Administrator Kwan insisted she was the only choice. "You brought this station together," he said. "That's leadership." Her office was larger than her old quarters, with windows looking out at the stars. But she had kept her favorite items close. The blue Velthian blanket draped over her chair, the carved wooden animals on her desk, the light crystals projecting memories of Earth. And there, preserved in clear resin, the original cookie wrapper from that day, 5 years ago. She touched it gently, remembering. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," Hana called. Pip entered, now a young adult Velthian with a teaching certification badge on her vest. She carried a bag full of data pads and learning materials. She was starting her first teaching assignment today. "Teacher Hana," Pip said, her voice nervous. "I start my first class in an hour." "I'm scared," Hana smiled, opening her desk drawer. Inside was a box of cookies, always kept full, always ready. She pulled one out and offered it to Pip. "Here," Hana said. "For courage." Pip took it carefully, holding it like the treasure it was. Then she looked at Hana with knowing eyes. "What if I meet a student who needs it more?" Hana's smile widened. "Then give it away. Especially if it's your last one. That's when it matters most." The whole thing? Pip asked. The whole thing. That's the point, Pip. Giving everything when you have nothing left, that's when you show what you really value. That's when kindness echoes the loudest. Pip tucked the cookie into her bag and hugged Hana tightly. Thank you for teaching me that. Thank you for teaching all of us. After Pip left, Hana stood at her window, looking out at the station. The education wing was busy with students of every species. The Share What You Have Center was visible from here. Beings entering and leaving with items and smiles. The community gardens that had been planted last year were growing well. A collaboration between Meln and several other species. She thought about that day 5 years ago. How tired she had been. How alone she had felt. How that single cookie had seemed like her last connection to home. She had given it away. And in return, she had received everything. Not just gifts. Not just attention or praise. She had received belonging. Family. Purpose. A home among the stars that felt more real than any place she had lived before. The cookie hadn't been magic. The kindness hadn't been special. She was just one person who chose to share when she had nothing left. But that choice had shown others it was possible. It had given permission for goodness. It had created a ripple that spread outward, touching beings she would never meet. Changing a station into a community. Transforming strangers into family. Hana's communicator beeped. A message from Grandmother Nixel. Dinner tonight at the Velthian Hall. 7 beings are bringing food. You bring yourself. That's enough. Hana smiled and responded with a confirmation. That evening, she walked through the corridors of Meridian 7, and everywhere she went, beings greeted her. Not as a stranger, not as just a teacher, as family. She passed a group of cubs playing in a recreation area. One of them, a small scrit child, was crying. Her friends gathered around, patting her back with their small appendages. Hana watched from a distance as one cub pulled something from her bag, a treat. Something special, and broke it into pieces to share with the crying child. The child stopped crying and smiled. Hana continued walking, her heart full. The cookie had been the beginning. But this endless cycle of giving, receiving, and giving again, this was the real gift. This was what happened when one person decided that someone else's happiness mattered more than their own comfort. This was what happened when you gave everything away. You got everything back. And then, you gave it away again. And the cycle continued. Forever rippling outward. Forever growing. Forever proving that kindness wasn't just nice. It was powerful. It was transformative. It was the thing that turned a cold metal station in the darkness of space into a warm, living home filled with beings who cared for each other. Hana reached the Velthian Hall. Inside, dozens of voices called her name in greeting. Grandmother Nixel waved her over to a seat of honor. Pip bounded over to hug her. Yuna was already there, saving a spot. Hana sat down among her family, surrounded by love that started with a cookie and became something infinite. She had given her last cookie away, and she had never felt richer in her entire life.